Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings be upon you. In the name of God, the most gracious and the merciful. This is QW, and today we have Imam Sab on our Healing is Believing podcast. And today we talk about episode 11, Disbelief and Ignorance Leads to Harm. Assalamu alaikum, Imam Sab. How are you today?
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Thank you very much. Thank you for having us on the show. It's always a pleasure. And how are you?
Shukr alhamdulillah. Thank you. Likewise, it's always a pleasure for you to give us your insight on all the matters of subject that we have covered to this point. And to get right started in the discussion today, we talk about the disbelief and ignorance leads to harm. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times it is through a lack of awareness, lack of education, lack of exploration of going within ourselves to question, why are we doing this? What is the purpose? Or we would take information for what it is. And we get conditioned with that in terms of making it our way of life. And it is through detachment is when one starts questioning everything. And the reality is the truth is the truth. And the truth wears no mask, and the truth has no fear. And we have seen the legacy of those who have fought for the truth, sadly have had a price to pay in history.
Of course, yeah.
And with this, Imam Saab, what would you like to add on to this discussion as we carry on to share with our audience on the healing aspect?
I think we have to understand the world in its entirety. We have to look at healing as an art form, healing as a source of not just coming through, in terms of understanding that healing is something that is paramount to our spiritual health. And we have to understand that healing begins not only just, with ourselves, involving ourselves in spiritual practice, going to a particular community center or a place of worship, but it starts in the home. And it starts with our very selves, in ourselves. So in order to seek, we understand from the mystical and the spiritual sciences of the world in different denominations of religions that the seeker is a wayfarer, and they are seeking something. And in that seeking, you have to be very careful because you have to tread on the path of truth. And it's from that truth in which everything that is truthful manifests. Now, God is the truth. He is the base line of all realities. As in Islam, he is referred to as Rabbil Alameen. He is the Lord of the worlds, not the Lord of one world, but he's the Lord of many worlds and all the worlds, because he created everything. So in that understanding then that there are many worlds, there are also then many paths also to God. And really it's you have to stay firm on the truest path of the truth. And that from my own understanding through my teacher, the beloved Kutub of the world, alhamdulillah, is that we understand that this is through Islam. And it's the true Islam, in which today, the Islam of today has lost all its essence. Because we're worshipping, but no one is really healing or being healed. We are turning to God, but people are still in this sort of schizophrenic frame of spirit, as it were. Mental health, spiritual health, the same thing. And the spiritual health is something that needs a lot of attention now in our communities. And I think what we have to understand is that because of the miscommunication, the breakdown in communication of our community leaders, they themselves being brought up on a religion based on culture is very dangerous, because it makes you very narrow-minded, and it doesn't leave you to the truths that often lie outside of the realms of your own conditioning. If you are supposed to be a seeker seeking the truth, then the truth really, as God says, that where the two rivers meet, it's in that space in which the wonders of his divineness are then opened. But how can you achieve that balance in life? You see, by doing yoga or by doing certain type of meditation practices, yet you follow a religion, i.e. Islam, where it's even stated in the scripture itself, and this is by word of God, not my words, these are words of God himself. He says 1400 years ago, he said, "From this day I have perfected for you your religion and completed my favor upon you." So this now begs the question, and I ask this question not just to yourself but to all the listeners and their leaders and their communities. I ask, is that if Islam was perfected 1400 years ago, as he states in the book that has been preserved through sacrifice, bloodshed, through enormous effort of those who came before us ancestrally, then if that Islam is perfected or has been perfected 1400 years ago, why are people suffering today? And why is it so prevalent in our communities? Why are we turning away from people who clearly need spiritual help? And we are condemning them to the alternate sciences of the world, the medical, the psychiatric world, and they themselves have their own answers. But the problem is that the solution, has to only be sought from the fact that the problem is coming from a spiritual source. It's not coming from a physical source. You can't take a tablet, and numb down spiritual pain. Spiritual pain has to be dealt with spiritually.
Indeed, and I think the problem is when we talk about spirituality, it is unseen, it is only felt. And that feeling comes through the heart.
Yes.
And if our hearts are not in a good state, the understanding of spirituality, is not is kind of just it's fragmented,
Yeah.
And it only allows us to relate to what's in the books and examples.
Yes.
And which is all well in reading those examples and trying to apply that in our lives, but it is important to seek in this world of 6 billion people. Everybody every day is being enlightened in some shape or form. And they are being enlightened, and there are those who have sacrificed this world to ascend to a higher level and have inner wisdom.
Yes.
And that wisdom is so profound because when that wisdom is shared, when you come across the individual that holds that light of truth, it is the ultimate truth in terms of how Islam should be, with peace, love, and light. And we all would not be suffering today.
Yes.
And it is through spiritual healing. A lot of our ailments, mental, just as you mentioned, stress, everything stems from the spiritual heart. And if we understand how to nurture and take care of our soul is one thing, to attending workshops and getting knowledge, but what about the action? And truly the one that has perfected their faith are healers and in helping humanity into reviving that soul and able to purify them so that they are in an uplifted state and understand the essence of existence. Nothing is forever. Where is the pain coming from? Where is the nucleus of everything that is happening? But there's a lot of ignorance.
Yeah.
And this ignorance is what's harming us, because spirituality is looked as something as, not of the mind. It is of the heart. And we're all beings of a system that goes around of logic and reasoning, failing to recognize there is this metaphysical science and everything is energy. And we need to understand our core existence is based on energy, and that is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So how can we help people to understand and revive, spirituality again?
Well, I'd like to touch on a few different other things as well as answering that question, because I think it's really important that we, even for the listeners themselves, coming from all different backgrounds, I think even just from understanding that we are experiencing a massive spiritual decline in the health of people today. humanity. You know, we are seeing cases where even animals, pets of people, are taking negative energy from them, yeah, becoming possessed almost, in some cases, because of the link between the human, the owner, and the pet themselves. That link, that bond of love between them. And this is all from the rahmah of Allah. Of course it is. Of course. And we understand that Allah has two uniquely divine attributes, which is the rahmah and the rahim. Yeah. And it's from the rahmah which you were speaking of earlier, which every day there are little divine inspirations that come, you know, and you see something, or you remember something, or something is shown to you. And this is all from the rahmah of Allah. As in the same time that, you know, at the end of your day, when you calculate how many breaths you've taken, or how many times your heart, you know, it was beating, you know, in that moment where you're thinking about God, then you start to understand just how much we take God for granted. Yeah. And I think the important thing to remember here is that when you become, in an essence of understanding God himself, trying to understand him, because one can never truly understand, and he's always seeking to understand him, and you have to go through so many obstacles. Even when that first veil is lifted of 70,000 veils between you and God, that it's filled with, you know, it's filled with a lot of bad energy as well, because God distanced himself from his creation as well, because he only wants the best to come to him, the best to want to know him. And you can't just make that jump over one day doing a meditation practice, you know, or listening to a lecture thinking I am with God now, because then he will test you, and that test is often very severe. What we have to understand is that we have to respect God, we have to fear him, but not fear also the fact in understanding the fear, because there are many people within the community, within the Islamic community, who will tell you, right, you are affected with this spiritual ailment. Now, according to this hadith, for example, you would have to read this, this and this, and your ailment will be absolved, it will be gone. The problem is, Holy Prophet, the traditions come from the Holy Prophet. The Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his holy family, he was in physical form in this world for over 20 years as a prophet of God. That's 20 years worth of traditions, of sayings, of actions, of scenarios, encounters with people, you know, could have been documented. 20 years worth of hadith there. Then when you look in terms of the written hadith, over 6,000 volumes, there's 6,000 hadith. So then where do you go to? And I think this is really what we're drawing on in terms of the context of what you're discussing in that, you know, the disbelief and ignorance leads to harm. Because if you yourself are not a spiritual person, or have not been given spiritual insight or any spiritual training, there has no one really been accountable for you. For myself, I have had to be accountable to another, myself. You see what I mean? And it's through that accountability then that those doors of knowledge is what opened to me, and then through actions and through testing, that, you know, one had to then try and climb and understand himself, and in understanding himself gets to understand his Lord, and then one becomes assured. Only then one becomes assured, not before, because the surety that you receive before is only one on hope. You hope God is listening. But what about, and to you or to the listeners as well, is that what about when you know that when you speak, he is listening? There's a different level of assurity then. You see? That if you were to ask of him, he would give. But you know that whatever he would give, it would come with something. It's never just clear like this. But you have to then reach that understanding of the essence of spirituality in its true manifestation. And its true manifestation is through the path of the awliya, the saints of God.
So in the similar way that we have had the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt,
yes,
where they're righteous beings,
yes,
who have perfected their faith, and any spiritual master, if you go and look at the hadith, like Prophet was a spiritual leader,
yes,
and it all starts from the heart.
Yes.
purification of a heart. A true spiritual master is able to purify people's heart and bring them to a level of God consciousness.
Yes.
And that is, and to sum that up, when that has been achieved in terms of the cleansing of the heart and purification, meaning now you have submitted to Allah and there's no ego. You have mastered your ego as well,
Yeah.
to come to a pure state of heart, a pure state of giving, a pure state of submission.
Yes.
And
So I think what we have to understand really with regards to, with respect to what you just said as well, I think that the higher dimensions of a human being can only truly be established by walking the path which attains the highest level of consciousness. And I think that's what, with Islam, it beautifully does that. Because when you start to even unravel the history, now I'm just talking from a very exoteric perspective, just the history alone should be enough to bring you to a pinpoint of reasoning. They say, okay, I can understand why there's been so much struggle with regards to this particular, aspect of faith. For example, when you're looking at the religions of the world, and even when you look at all the other religions, they also have similar episodes and stories of struggle, of sacrifice, and everything else. And I think that's what it all tells us is, to the individualistic sort of self, is that sacrifice has to come from within. A sacrifice of your time, a sacrifice of the things that you believed were cherishable or momentous in your life, truly actually in the eyes of the higher being, God Almighty Himself, that it really doesn't mean anything. It's insignificant, and that your true purpose is seeking nearness to Him. And I think that, in where you're in a world where there's sort of disbelief, and disbelief is bringing to that sort of essence of causing harm to you, because by you not believing in something, you're totally negating it from its true understanding, and that lowers the shield of God on you. You see, do you see what we're saying here, the KW? Or
right, right. So really, the awareness is the knowledge is one to constantly be seeking.
of course,
And
that's 100%. We have to be very, very clear with ourselves that with regards to what information we're getting, because information can be coming from every single direction to you. Every single day, every human being on Earth is walking this planet, and they're being bombarded with background radiation. Yeah, that's radiation from your cell phones, from wireless receivers, from Wi-Fi hotspot places, and all of these different things all around your Bluetooth. All this is all part of the wireless technology, and all this is carried by energy. Fundamentally, it's all energy, and energy is information. Now, so when we're looking at information vocally that you're receiving, whether it's in your congregations, in your circles, you have to ensure that that information itself is something that reaches the heart. And it's only truly by then, by the feeling, truly can you then be healed, and by the healing can you truly then believe. And I think it's a beautiful summation of understanding that we, each of us, have within ourselves an instrument and an organ which is able to decipher from what is bad for us to what is good for us. And I think the more people that connect to their hearts will, it will just be a much more sort of pleasant experience, this life, in which we can reach out and help others without even thinking about ourselves. You know,
it really
um,
is. You said it so well, because the heart is the uh, the vital organ in our body, not just
mm,
for beating, but to able to connect with our heart, see from our heart, see from the
yes,
soul will come out, and that is where the truth lays. And we are conditioned every day with so much information, and to filter that out, what is right, what is true, what is false, and to be able to kind of go through that, going through historical journals, going through the process of reasoning and then to seeking true guidance, because there's
Of
guidance
course.
out there. Everybody also wants to control through fear and to kind of keep us bounded. And
Of
yes, while
course.
rules and regulations are needed, because if there's no boundaries, then man would just kind of fall off. And
Yeah.
there's so many moving parcels, and that's why truly people get tired of following a faith, a religion, because they find it confines them. And,
Mm.
and I think it's important to understand, going right back to the root of it. Why were we born? What is our purpose? And
Yeah.
everything really within us. And the more clearer we are in terms of how we use this apparatus of our heart, using and connecting it, honesty, sincerity, and transparency, the the ability to see through false information and to stand up for the truth comes with such a force within us, because you are living to the commandments of God. And when you live from that standpoint and you have a guide that is aligned with one with God, you are just in such a great care
Mm.
that you you're actually in a care of sincerity, wanting not only for your best, what is good for your soul, but
Mm.
for the entire humanity. And that's what a true leader, does, is here not for themselves, but for everybody. And like that's what we do at Divine Clinic Foundation. We're here for all of humanity, anyone that's suffering through medical ailments, through emotional, physical trauma, negative energy, all all of the conditioned disbeliefs, to kind of bring back that sense of clarity within oneself, so they can make the best decision that is for themselves and their soul, which will never lie to the individual. When you are feeling something, there is truth in that, of why you feel, what's going on.
Mm.
Tune into that instinct. Your compass is that heart within yourself, and always will speak the truth. And with that, Imam Saab, as we wrap up this segment, should you like to add anything else to
Yes,
our
please, of
audience?
course. I mean, yes, of course. And I think just going back to obviously our teacher as well, and paying homage and respect to them, and to all the spiritual masters as well of the past. What we have to understand is that in a world today, in a plethora and sea of communication and knowledge at your very fingertips, information at your fingertips, to truly understand what the true path is I think that you have to follow the path of those who are in truth. Now, today, the person who may have a certificate from this university or that university, or is prominent on TV, for example, because of their certain, sort of uh, program schedule and things like this, that they've gained a lot of popularity because all they do is debate all the time. I think it's important. It's not about to debate. The important thing is to reach the hearts. Debating is important to some degree, but it's not everything. It doesn't bring you to consciousness. Yeah, debate really just proves nothing in an essence. It's just for that time. And I think what we're saying here at this point is to follow the path of those who came before us, in understanding that those who reach nearness to God, be it whether they be, you know, labeled as almost as quite sort of innovative thinkers of their time at their times. Within Islam we have the awliya, and they are true people of truth who have lived a life of truth, a life of piety, righteousness, and everything in between, and they have reached the highest stations with God. And in doing so, when you read about them, that you want to follow now, if you want to follow in the traditions of the Holy Prophet, then follow in their traditions, because their traditions, they themselves give reverence to the Holy Prophet in a way today that is unparalleled to anything else. On many shrines today of these great saints, you'll see the names of the Blessed Five, for example, the name of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the name of his son-in-law, Imam Ali, alayhi salam, his daughter, Bibi Fatima, and his two grandsons, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, alayhi salam, respectively. And in understanding that, why is it that even the saints themselves of the past paid such honor and tribute to these five of the holy household, you know? And they also, even in their discourses, still gave reverence to the Khalifa of Islam also, the Abu Bakr bin Siddiq radiallahu an, to Umar as well, Hazrat Umar radiallahu an. That we understand that there is a sense of kinship, a sense of companionship, a sense of loyalty to the truth in whichever part anyone played, that we respect the truth in all of its manifestations. And I just want to leave you with a little sort of snippet of wisdom from our teacher as well regarding the heart. Regarding the heart, is that don't think that the heart was designed only to beat blood around the body. The blood, the heart was also formed to beat falsehood away from the heart itself, from the contents of the heart. And the inner heart is the sanctum of God. And that's where everyone should be trying to reach within themselves. But before they even get there, they have to get through the layers of the heart. So protect yourself, protect your heart, protect yourself from negative energy. Be more aware about it. And, you know, as God says in the Holy Scripture himself, to seek the path of those who have been favored. At this point, knowledge, the right knowledge, and get the wisdom, and from where you can, and, you know, to reach out for the truth and to stand for the truth. Because all of the Holy Scriptures, they all talk about righteous individuals who stood up for the truth. And I think just that one characteristic alone can make or break anything.
Yes, thank you, Imam Saab, because surely it comes down, we're not here to engage in politics or the ego. You know, we're here to just, you know, shine the light of truth here. And to, when we talk about believers and we talk about the lives that believers have lived, and we've talked about the perfection of their faith, we are talking about what was it, the connection that they had with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it was their spiritual connection that they in conjunction with the knowledge. And when you have mastered spirituality and knowledge together, that is when you have, you know, mastered the laws of the universe within yourself, and now you are one in the with Allah. And that is truly the greatest reward man can ever attain, and to perfect
Yes.
themselves. And we've seen so many historical texts where the perfection has happened and the beings are blessed with divine gifts. And with that, I would like to let our audience know if there's any questions you may have, any future subject matters that you would like us to discuss or touch upon. We'll be glad to, you know, take those topics to heart and bring them out to you. In the meantime, we look forward to, you know, sharing truth, love, and light and peace. And inshallah, till next time, assalamu alaikum. And thank you, Imam Saab, for your insight on today's discussion. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.